All right, for today's video review, we're going to be continuing our look here at the Transformers Legacy Evolution Dead-Eye Duel 2-pack, which is an Amazon exclusive. In the last video, we took a look at the Senate Guard Javelin here, and for today's video, we're going to be just focusing on a Senticon Cascade here. And yeah, I'd say that this is definitely the weaker part of the set of the two figures. It's kind of funny that the two molds that they chose for this set are this like fairly well thought out, well regarded studio series mold, and then this mold, which is like kind of just like a huge shell former of like just a transformer like lying down and then covered with car parts, and then is in and of itself a kind of like redo of a previous mold from Power of the Primes, which wasn't even one of the stronger molds from that series either. So just in stark contrast, the two of them together, especially like in robot mode, is just like, oh yeah, this is a good figure, and this is it's okay. It's not a terrible mold, but yeah, it's not my favorite. I said last video that this mold had been used a bunch of times. I guess I was wrong about that. I was trying to remember, and it turns out this is only the third time this mold has been used. I think I was just confusing it with the Power of the Primes mold, which is very, very similar to this mold, which had been used a bunch of times. But yeah, no, this mold originally was used for Siege Chromia, and then was used as a Generation Selects, I believe, Nightbird. Unfortunately, I don't have either of those to show this off with. I mean, I do have Nightbird, but I removed all of the bits off of Nightbird, so she's just like a non-transforming figure now. So I can't really, this comparison in vehicle mode kind of means nothing, but that's what they look like together. Before getting on to other comparisons, this set does come with a number of accessories. Now, I believe that these two and then these two accessories all did come with the original mold, and then the only things that are new to this set are these two pieces here, which I feel like you do get, especially compared to Javelin, you do get a bit more versatility in how all these things interplay with each other, because these two pieces are like the grenade pieces, but they also have the the 3mm peg and port on either side, so you can really do a lot of stuff here. This is how the original set was kind of using it as this is the blaster and then these are the grenades, but you could also connect these to the end to make like a longer blaster, or connect them the other way so they're in the middle. And you can still do all of that, obviously. I mean, the peg tolerances aren't like, they don't stay together super well all the time, but, well enough. So you can do that, or you could also have those there and put this there. And then these two parts really just add more versatility to that, because both of these also have those same 3mm, pegs and ports on either side. So you can plug them in this way and do lots of crazy stuff like that. I think that the best looking orientation is to leave this up here as the scope, and then these actually do kind of fit together in a way that's a little bit more seamless, these two pieces. So you could have that as its own separate gun, or attach this to the front here, and then keep these as just grenades off to the side. And that's how I tend to prefer to do it, but you do have some options there. And then in terms of storage for this stuff, for these you can peg them onto the back here, which actually helps hide the hands. It's kind of funny that both of the molds that they chose are ones that have like the hands just kind of hanging out in the back, even though they're very different figures other than that, but these do help hide those a little bit if you just peg those in there, and I think that works. And then this you kind of just peg onto the top. And again, I don't usually like the guns pegged onto the top of vehicles look, but since this is a Cybertronian vehicle, it bothers me a lot less. And I don't think we ever saw Cascade's alt mode in the comic books at all, so I think that it can kind of just be whatever. I'm pretty sure that Cascade was exclusive to the 2019 comics, like she was original to that comic stream, unlike Javelin, who also showed up in the original IDW continuity. I'm pretty sure about that. At least that's what I found online. I don't remember encountering Cascade in the original, comics, but I definitely did not read all of them. So it's possible, but I couldn't really find anything online about that. But yeah, it's an okay vehicle mode. Something that I didn't notice before I took all the parts off of Nightbird is that I've noticed that this back section doesn't really sit like level with the ground. Like it kind of slants down, and that's everything is hooked in correctly. So I guess that's just how it is, which is a little bit strange and it bugs me a little bit, but not the end of the world there. But otherwise, it's a fairly decent all mode, kind of a weird long car, but I think it works. In terms of other comparisons in this mode, obviously we saw her with Javelin, saw her with Nightbird. For a standard one, here she is with Kingdom Sideswipe there. And then again, like I said, I don't have the original like Chromia or the vehicle mode for Nightbird to show her off with, but I can show her off with the Power of the Primes Moonracer mold. As you can see, they're pretty similar. The transformation is mostly the same. Basically, this is just like a complete rehaul of this figure, just changing a couple things here and there, and then obviously taking out the combiner gimmick. But for all intents and purposes, it's pretty similar in terms of the molding there, which again was always very strange to me because it's like, this is the one we choose to just like completely remake. It was never that great a mold to begin with, so I don't know, kind of a strange choice to me, but that's a strange choice. That conversation is many years old now, since that was the conversation to have during Siege. But either way, that's what they look like together. In terms of transformation, we can just take off all the accessories here and put them off to the side. They don't end up storing in the same place in robot mode, so that is the time that you would want to do it there. But yeah, we can just take the hands here and just fold them down there like that, and then just rotate the arms out like that to unpeg them from these sections, which you can then rotate out to the side. I don't love how the body is like clearly visible from the top here. Like, I guess it kind of blends in with all the techie detail, but knowing that it's the body, it just kind of makes it obvious that it is just like a robot lying down, but whatever. But yeah, you just want to rotate these out to the side just that far for now. Then we can take this section with the head on it, then flip it over to cover up that port, and then the head you do have to kind of rotate like this so it fits in this cavity in robot mode. I don't know if you had to do that with Chromia or not. I don't remember having to do that with Nightbird, but just the shape of Kaskade's head, you do have to do that. So you just want to rotate it around and just fold it up like that. And then we can bring the arms down to the side. Take this entire lower section and rotate it around at the waist. And there you can see the legs just folded up in there. And then you want to take these panels, the like fenders with the wheel section, just untab them both from each side, just so you can take this panel and bring this up on double hinge. And then you want to take this front panel, rotate it to the inside. It's kind of loose, but it ends up just kind of like getting compressed in place, so it doesn't really matter. It locks into place in the vehicle mode orientation with a nice click, and then in this orientation, it kind of just ends up getting sandwiched between parts, so it works well enough. But you want to unclick it here and then bring it up on the double hinge, and then you want to rotate these sections in, and they'll sort of just like automatically, sink this piece further into place and tab them in like that. And then we can take the side sections with the wheels, rotate them up onto the back of the legs, and then rotate down the foot just like that. And there we have Kaskade in her robot mode. And yeah, all things considered, considering the mold that she's using, I think she looks fairly good. It is definitely like a really Ghibli mold. This is kind of one of the female Transformer molds where it's just like, oh yeah, to make her transform, let's just like make an action figure of a female figure and then just put all the car parts on her backpack and hanging off as kibble. Like pretty much the entire outside of the car is the backpack and then these pieces on the legs and then I guess the chest because that is visible and then the arms, I guess. But like mostly like the entirety of the robot is kind of hidden with inside of it, which is a little bit annoying, which I wouldn't mind in and of itself if it didn't manifest in having like these huge sort of like backpack and kibble chunks. It's just a little bit awkward. Again, not the worst. It's not a terrible figure, but when you're looking at it in contrast with Javelin, which is I'd think a fairly well designed figure, then it is kind of like a stark contrast there. But yeah, here's her new head sculpt. Looks very accurate to the comic books and definitely very nice there with the nice little one eye, kind of like Kopaka style eye there. In terms of the weaponry, obviously, we can have her hold the gun here. Again, it has all the same versatility as it did before. You could like have this be one long gun, which, is kind of how it's supposed to be because she's like a sniper in the comics, which is why the two of them are kind of paired off against each other. Or you could have it be like multiple guns and then take this section and make it a smaller gun and then do whatever you want with the grenades. You could either, have those be the barrel. In terms of storage for all this stuff, the grenades, how you're supposed to store them is just plug them into these ports here on the side, which it does work. work, but because it's a, a round hole and then like a square tab, it's not like the most secure connection. Like they do tend to just like fall off a lot of the time, which I find a bit annoying. But what I've also found that you can do is if you actually look at like the like slot for how the wheels are attached here, that also does fit these tabs and is a little bit of a tighter connection. So I tend to store them like that, where they're just, stuck out of the wheels here. I don't know. It doesn't look any less clean, I don't think, as an aesthetic of just having them stick off to the side, and it does stay in a little bit better. So personally, that's how I prefer to do it. And then in terms of the gun, obviously, if we have it all combined here, oops, that part does like to fall off. It's like probably the loosest connection, because I've noticed that it's like this has been a thing from the original mold as well, where there's not like an actually complete square slot here. It's just like a three-sided, cavity there. So it tends to want to like rotate out, which is a bit annoying. But in terms of storage, you can just peg it onto the back here like that, and that works well enough. I've also found that it's a little bit less stable, but this peg here, which was just like one of the, siege like blast port things, it does kind of fit in the cavity of one of these grooves here. So if you want it a little bit more like tight on her back, you can get it to stay like that. It's not a great connection, but it is possible to have it stay like that. And I tend to prefer that just because, it's a little bit cleaner on the backpack, and the backpack already sticks out so much that I don't want to add too much else there, but it definitely is less stable. And I think that this works well enough. It's just, adding even more kind of sticking off the back of this figure. In terms of articulation, the head is on a pretty good ball joint. Again, because of how it folds up for transformation, it does get to like look pretty far up as well, and then gets a good range, rotation wise. And then I guess if you wanted to use this, you could, but I don't think that that's really necessary. The shoulders here are on universal joints, so they can rotate all the way around before it kind of bumps into the backpack, and then hinge out to the side about that far. She's got a mushroom peg at the bicep, so for a bicep swivel. I found that like when I move her arms back and forth, there's a bit of like wiggle at the mushroom peg, which is a little bit weird, but whatever. She's got about 90 degrees of bend at the elbow. The wrists can only bend in for transformation. Has a waist cut. Oh no, yeah, right. It is kind of locked in, but she does have the like lower section of the waist cut, which only gets about that range. So there is technically a waist swivel, but because everything is locked in place, you can only really have access to this one, which only gets about that range. So not great, but whatever. And then the hips can go forward about that far, back only about that far, out to the side about that far. She's got a thigh swivel. She does have 90 degrees of bend at the knee, but you do have to kind of like rotate these panels along with it. Otherwise, they kind of bump into the hip. I really wish that these kind of just like rotated up so that they sit in line with the legs rather than kind of like sitting off the back of them and then bumping into the knee joint. Because then, then when you're actually bending the leg, then it's going past it. I don't know. It's just another thing about this mold is like if these just slid out a little bit, then they could rotate around and actually sit in place like that. And I just feel like that would be so much better, so much cleaner, but whatever. And then the feet have pretty good articulation. Because of transformation, they can rotate forward and back, and then they also do have that separate ankle tilt. And her feet are so thin that she doesn't even always necessarily need the ankle tilt, but it is nice to be able to get her feet flat-footed on the ground in pretty much any pose there. In terms of comparisons in this mode, here she is again with Kingdom side swipes. You can see fairly standard size deluxe there. Here she is again with Nightbird, who again is the same mold, but I took off all the extra bits because, in the original Generation 1 cartoon, Nightbird never transformed. So I just, wanted it as like a regular action figure, and it's a lot cleaner because of the way this mold is and how so much of the alt mode is just like stuff on the back. It works well for making a good Nightbird. But you can see, yeah, no remolding other than the head sculpt, unlike Javelin, who had a pretty decent amount of remolding from the original Studio Series RC mold. This one is pretty much just a straight repaint with a new head, which is, fine. I guess I could have used a new chest because, she kind of had like a cockpit windshield thing on the chest in the comics, but whatever. Here she is again with the Moonracer mold, just so you can see, again, not the same mold, but, kind of the same mold, like very inspired. But I've never noticed this before. Do they actually have the same thighs? Huh. Look at that. It actually is partially the same mold. I thought that it was actually a new mold from the ground up. They might have the same hands too. Look at that. Huh. Well, learning new things about this mold that's been out since, Siege, which is like what, 4 or 5 years ago at this point. So yeah, okay, whatever. I guess they are partially the same mold, but still pretty similar regardless, since I don't have, a complete version of this one to show it off with. And then of course here she is again with Javelin. And yeah, like I said, I definitely think that she's the weaker of the two in this pack. I just think that this mold is a lot better in general. The Studio Series RC mold. It also has a bit of a backpack, but I think it wears it a lot better. And, most of the robot actually becomes a significant part of the alt mode. So it's just a bit more clever in the transformation, whereas this one is just kind of like lie her down and like rotate her around and fold her up. And like hide the legs and fold up the arms. So it's like, I like the new head sculpt. I think that the color scheme on Javelin is a lot more interesting just because like, she's got like the darker purple and the main light purple and then the really light purple and then the pink and then the blue highlights and then the yellow. Whereas like Cascade is like mostly just pink and blue with like a couple like silver highlights and then the eyes obviously, and then the weapons and wheels are different colors, but like it is really two-tone. I mean, it's fine. It still is a nice looking color scheme, I guess, just in contrast to Javelin, who I think looks a lot better. It is kind of funny to see these two in the like 2-pack together, just because it's like, oh yeah, this is a great figure and this one is it's okay, but whatever. It's still nice to get more female Decepticons, and it is a nice looking color scheme. It's just not as good as Javelin in my opinion, but either way, if you get one, you're getting both of them. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Make sure to check me out on my Instagram account. That's toys.n.art. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Legacy Evolution. What is it? Dead Eye Duel 2-pack Cascade.